Hello, good morning, everybody. Good morning, beautiful people. It's Saturday morning and it's 11 o'clock. What does that signal to us? It's time for Genius Kids. Are you ready?
Yeah.
It was just 1 week ago I was here, but I miss you like it's been forever. Did you miss me?
Yes.
All right, so welcome to another episode of Genius Kids. Genius Kids is the show where we discover ways to ignite the genius in every child because on the show here, we believe that every child has a genius in him or her, okay? So are you ready for today's story?
Yeah.
Now, grab a seat, sit still, listen up, and enjoy the story. But before we get right into the story, let's take a short break. As you're taking this break, gather all your friends, gather your brothers and sisters, get seated because it's going to be a fun morning on this show. See you shortly. Hello, everybody. Hope you're still there. Have you gathered everybody around you? I remain Genevieve Duruiheoma, your Genius Kids host. Remember, kids, feel free to call me Miss Genny, okay? So today, we shall be reading a very interesting story, a classic. And I bet most of you must have heard of it, but nobody ever tells stories like Miss Genny. So what are we reading today? We shall be reading Jack and the Beanstalk. Yes, you heard right. Jack and the Beanstalk. It's a ladybird tale. It was retold by Vera Southgate and illustrated by Melanie Florian. Are you ready?
Yes.
Shall we begin? All right. Now, everybody listen. Once upon a time, there was a widow who had a lazy son called Jack. They lived together in a tiny cottage. Jack and his mother were very poor. As time went on, they became poorer and poorer, while Jack grew lazier and lazier. Soon, Jack and his mother were so poor that all they had left in the world was one cow. At last, the day arrived when Jack's mother said, "Tomorrow, you must take our cow to the market and sell it. She is all we have left in the world, so be sure that you get a very good price for her." The next day, Jack set off for the market. On the road, he met a butcher who asked him where he was going with the cow. When Jack told him, the butcher said, "I will exchange these beans for your cow." He showed Jack some strange-looking beans, all of different colors. "I would be a fool to exchange my cow for your beans," said Jack. "Ah, but these are no ordinary beans. These are magic beans," said the butcher. Jack thought after a while, what a fine thing it would be to have some magic beans. So he gave the cow to the butcher, put the beans in his pocket, and set off for home. Look, mother, cried Jack. "I have exchanged our cows for these magic beans." His mother was very, very angry. "You silly boy! Now we shall surely starve." In her anger, she threw the beans out of the window and sent Jack upstairs to bed without any supper. The next morning, when Jack woke up, his room was much darker than usual. When he looked out of the window, he saw that a huge beanstalk had sprung up during the night from the magic beans that his mother has thrown out of the window. Jack ran outside and immediately began to climb the beanstalk. He climbed and climbed and climbed, but whenever he looked up, the top of the beanstalk still stretched upwards out of sight. After many hours of climbing, Jack reached the top of the beanstalk and stepped off into a wild bare country. A long road led away into the distance. Jack set off along the road and soon he met a very old woman. "Good morning, Jack," said the woman. Jack was amazed that the woman knew his name. I know all about you, she said. This land belongs to a wicked giant. When you were a baby, the giant stole all your father's belongings. That is why your mother is now so poor. You must try to get your father's wealth back, she continued. If you are brave, I will try to help you. At that, the old woman disappeared, and Jack went forward along the lonely road. Towards evening, Jack came to a castle. He knocked on the great door and a woman opened. I am tired and hungry, said Jack. Please, can you give me some supper and a bed for the night? Oh, my poor boy, cried the woman. My husband is a giant and he eats people. He would be sure to find you and eat you for his supper. Jack felt afraid when he heard this, but he was too tired and too hungry to go another step. So he pleaded with the woman to take him in. At last, the giant's wife agreed and she led Jack into her kitchen. Then she set a fine supper for him. Scarcely had he finished eating when the ground was shaken by heavy stamping feet. Boom! 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 3 loud knocks were heard on the door. Boing, boing, boing. It was the giant returning home. Jack's heart began to thump. The giant's wife began to shake. What do I do? What do I do? She grabbed Jack and pushed him into the oven, which fortunately was cold. Then she went to let her husband in. She took a deep breath. Then she opened the door. The giant stomped into the kitchen, sniffed around, and then he roared. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make me bread. Nonsense! Nonsense, said the giant's wife. You are dreaming! And she set an enormous meal on the table before him. As the giant was hungry, he sniffed no more, but sat down to eat. Jack peeped at the giant through a crack in the oven door. He was astonished to see how much the giant ate. Wow. When the giant had finished eating his meal, he shouted to his wife, Bring me my hen! His wife brought the hen and went off to bed. Lay! Shouted the giant, whereupon the hen laid a golden egg. Another! Shouted the giant, whereupon the hen laid another golden egg. Again and again! The giant shouted. So the hen continued to lay eggs. Soon there were 12 golden eggs on the table. Then the giant fell asleep in his chair and he snored so loudly that the castle shook. As soon as Jack heard the snores of the giant, he crept out of the oven, seized the hen, and tiptoed out of the castle. Then he set off running along the road as fast as he could. On and on he ran and ran until at last he came to the top of the beanstalk. He climbed down quickly and took the wonderful hen to his poor mother. When Jack set the hen on the table and ordered it to lay a golden egg, Jack's mother could not believe her eyes. Now our worries are over, she said. We are going to go on a short break now. When we return, we see what happens to Jack and his mom. Hope you're enjoying the story so far.
Yes.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy to have you back. This is still 91.3 FM Radio Maria, the voice of truth. And you're on the Genuis Kids Show, where we tell stories, discuss ideas every Saturdays, and on Sundays, we discuss issues that pertain to children. So, earlier we had introduced our story for the day, that's Jack and the Beanstalk, and we've read a part of the story. I hope you followed, because remember, as usual, I'll ask you questions at the end, and you have the opportunity to call in and tell me what you learned from the story. So, shall we continue with the story?
Yes.
All right. But after a while, Jack longed for another adventure. He was determined to visit the giant's castle again. He disguised himself so that the giant's wife would not know him. Just as before, Jack climbed the beanstalk and reached the castle towards evening. When the giant's wife opened the door, he said, "I am hungry and tired. Can I stay for the night?" "You cannot stay here," replied the giant's wife. "The last boy I took in stole my husband's hen." But Jack chatted so pleasantly that eventually the giant's wife let him in. After Jack had eaten a good supper, the giant's wife hid him in a cupboard. No sooner had she done this when in stomped the giant, roaring, "Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Nonsense," said the giant's wife. "You are dreaming." And she set an enormous supper before him. After supper, the giant roared, "Fetch me my money bags." His wife brought the bags and went off to bed. The giant emptied all the money onto the table and counted it over and over again before putting it back into the bags. Then he fell asleep. As soon as Jack heard the giant snores, he crept out of the cupboard and picked up the heavy money bags. He managed to sling them over his shoulders on his back. Then he let himself out of the castle as quietly as possible. Jack could not run along the road because the money bags were so heavy, but he reached the top of the beanstalk safely. Jack's mother was overjoyed to see him, and when he emptied the money bags on the table, she was astonished. With the money, they built a bigger house and bought furniture, new clothes, and food. Jack and his mother were very contented. But Jack began to long for more adventure. He was determined to visit the giant's castle once more. This time, Jack used a different disguise. Once again, Jack climbed the beanstalk, followed the same path, and arrived at the castle door. The giant's wife did not recognize him, and he begged for a night's lodging. "No, no," she cried. "You cannot come in. The last 2 boys that I took in were thieves. No, you can't come in, please." Jack begged and begged and begged, and at last the giant's wife took pity on him, let him in, and gave him some supper. Then she hid him in the wash basket in the corner. Soon the giant came home and roared, "Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make me bread." "Nonsense," said the giant's wife. "You are dreaming." And she set an enormous supper before him. After supper, the giant shouted, "Bring me my harp." The giant's wife brought a beautiful golden harp and set it on the table before him. Then she went off to bed. "Play!" roared the giant, and the harp began to play of its own accord. Jack had never heard such sweet music before. The harp continued to play until the giant was almost asleep. Then he shouted, "Stop!" and the music stopped. As soon as Jack heard the loud snores of the giant, he jumped out of the corner and seized the harp. But the harp called out, "Master! Master!" The giant woke up in a fury. "You are the boy who stole my hen and my money bags," he bellowed. Then he staggered to his feet and set off after Jack. Jack was terrified. He ran for his life towards the beanstalk. Looking over his shoulders, Jack saw the giant striding after him. Then he ran as fast as he ever had run before in his life. Jack reached the top of the beanstalk safely, but the giant was right close behind him. He scrambled and slid down the beanstalk, shouting, "Mother! Mother, bring me the axe quickly! The giant is coming!" Then Jack's mother brought her son the axe. By the time the giant was climbing rapidly down the beanstalk, Jack swung the axe with all his strength and gave one mighty blow at the beanstalk. The beanstalk toppled down, and there was a tremendous thud as the giant was thrown headlong to the ground. The giant fell dead in Jack's garden, and so big was he that he filled it up from end to end. Pointing at the giant, Jack said to his mother, "He robbed us of all our wealth." At that moment, there appeared the old woman who had talked to Jack. She told him that she was really a fairy and that it was she who had made Jack take the magic beans in exchange for the cow. She had wanted him to climb the beanstalk, and she had led him to the giant's castle. "Your troubles are now over," the fairy told Jack and his mother. "You will never again be hungry or poor, and you will be happy as long as you live." And so it was. Jack and his mother lived happily ever after. The
End.
Hope we enjoyed today's story.
Yes.
Alright, so that's the end of the story, Jack and the Beanstalk. We shall be going on a break. When we return, we'll open the phone lines for our listeners at home to call in and tell us what they learned from the story, and we'll answer questions from the story. But the number to call is 081 084 47518. Again, I say 081 084 47518. But before we do that, do you know I forgot something very important? I didn't tell you the guest I have in the studio. How could I miss? I was so excited to read the story that I forgot to introduce my guest. Pardon me. Now I think it's time for you to meet my guest. I have 3 amazing guests with me here in the studio. And that reminds me, next Friday is Children's Day, right? On Saturday, we'll be having a special edition on this show, and we'll be opening up to welcome some of you to the studio. Wouldn't that be exciting?
Yes.
So if you would like to join me at the studio next Saturday, not everybody who wants can come in because we don't have as much room. But if you would like to join me at the studio next weekend, you must be at least 6 years old. So we don't come here and be saying, "Baby, don't cry," okay? If you'd like to join me at the studio, you send a message to this number and tell us your name, your age, where you're coming from, okay? So you tell us your name, your age, where you're coming from. We'll consider all the entries and we'll let you know if you've been selected to join us for the special Children's Day edition next Saturday. Tell someone to tell someone to tell someone that would love to be here. So the number again to call when we return, and the number to which you can indicate your interest to join us in the studio is 081 084 47518. Now meet my guests. Hello. Tell us about you.
Hello everyone. My name is Chidera Ibirim.
Hi Chidera, how are you doing?
I'm fine.
How old are you?
I'm 15.
Wow, it's so good to have a teenager here in the studio. Welcome, Chidera.
Thank you.
So good to have you. Welcome. Hope you enjoyed the story.
Yes.
Okay, so let's meet you.
Hello everybody,
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine.
Tell us about you. Who are you?
My name is Chibueze Ibiru.
Oh, Chidera Ebirim. Chibueze, we have the Ebirims with us today. How old are you, Chibueze?
I am 9 years old.
9 years old. Welcome to the Genuis Kids Show.
Thank you.
Hello, can we meet you, Princess? What's your name?
Chimerum Ibirim Livia.
Oh, Chimerum Ebirim Livia. All right, we have guests from the Ebirim's family today, and we are so excited. Welcome on board, Chimelum, Chibeze, and Chidera. It was fun reading the Jack and the Beanstalk with you, and we hope to hear from our contributors right after this break.